Hello, I'm Denise Galoni. Welcome to today's episode of Empowering You. My guest today is Jessica K. Whitehead. Jessica is a senior curator of collections at the Kentucky Derby Museum. She's a writer, a curator, and an artist. She's going to share some Derby history with you today, talk about Harlan Hubbard, one of her passions, and so much more. I hope you enjoyed today's episode.
It's gonna be better. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be better. Yeah. It's gonna be great. I can't wait. It's gonna be great.
My guest today is Jessica K. Whitehead. She's a senior curator of collections for the Kentucky Derby Museum, where she has recently written The History of the Kentucky Derby in 75 Objects, published in 2024 by the University Press of Kentucky, and also Driftwood, The Life of Harlan Hubbard, published by the press in 2025. Outside the Derby Museum, Jessica has studied Harlan Hubbard since her student days at Hanover College, curating multiple exhibits in the region and providing the introduction to the watercolors of Harlan Hubbard from the collection of Bill and Flo Cadell, released in 2021. She served as a founding board member of the new nonprofit Payne Hollow on the Ohio, where she still manages its collection of artifacts. She is currently a board member for the Kentucky Museum and Heritage Alliance. In her spare time, Jessica enjoys making art, gardening with her partner Phil, and reading books with our very large cat, Bean. She lives in New Albany, Indiana. Welcome, Jessica.
Thank you so much, Denise. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for being here. I'm so excited we got to make this work because I
Yeah.
mentioned the Kentucky Derby, which we'll talk about in a second. And so this gets to be your busy time, I would think, coming in April.
Yes, yeah. So this time of year, everything is sort of pulled by the tides of Derby. And that's pretty traditional for those of us who live in the Louisville area. Almost everything is sort of dictated by the tourist season of Derby time.
Sure. So how did you get started with the Kentucky Derby?
Yeah, so when I went to college in Southern Indiana, about an hour north of where I am now, and after college, I was an art history major. I loved museums. I've been going to museums for my entire life, and so I really had a passion for museums and thought that maybe museums were where my career goals lay. So I wanted to get my foot in the door, and I started working at the Kentucky Derby Museum right out of college.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, just I got lots of opportunities there to move into more and more positions that helped me hone my skills, helped me hone what I really love to do, and especially helped me understand that I loved writing and I loved telling stories. So that's sort of where my connection to the Kentucky Derby came about. But I was on a learning curve because I didn't grow up with horse racing. My family wasn't into horse racing or anything like that.
Right.
Um, so really, it was definitely a learning curve. But if you love history, history is history is history. And so I was able to just jump right in and learn about this fascinating story that the Derby just celebrated its 150th anniversary last year. There's 150 years of stories there to learn about and to interpret and to tell on behalf of the museum.
Right. And just like you, I didn't grow up around horses or the Kentucky Derbies. I watch it every year, but
Yeah.
I know very little about the Kentucky Derby. So it's just fascinating to hear some of this and to hear that you wrote a book about 75 objects from the Derby.
Yeah, so my job there at the Derby Museum is as the caretaker of our permanent artifacts collection. So I work with all of the objects that are in this book every single day. It's my job to make sure that they're kept safe and that they are used in exhibitions and used in all kinds of different ways of telling stories. And um, our collection is over 20,000 items. So
Wow.
it's a huge collection that we're fortunate to caretake
Right.
of all kinds of different items. Um, certainly lots of trophies and saddles and silks and things that you would expect. But also, things you might not expect. So lots of business records and photographs and videos and certainly some more unusual items like cameras and all kinds of things
Wow.
that help tell that broader cultural story of the Kentucky Derby. And so the purpose of this book was something that the museum and I wanted to create to help showcase um, the breadth and the exciting um, items that we have in this collection and get that out to a broader audience other than the people who are able to walk through our doors every day. So, people who, for example, don't live in Kentucky or this region can then pick up this book and get a little tour of our collection and get a little tour of what the Derby means and why. Even if you're not
Sure.
interested in horse racing, you might watch the Derby every year because it's a cultural phenomenon.
It
So,
is really, and I didn't. I mean, I guess they had a museum. I never even thought about a museum with all this. It's surprised me you said there's so many artifacts there.
oh yeah, well, there's a huge material culture with the Kentucky Derby. So, um, you may or may not know about derby glasses and that people have derby glass collections. Derby glasses are a huge part of that material culture, but lots of collectibles related to the race, and then of course lots of historic artifacts related to all of these different horses, owners, trainers, jockeys, all of these people who make it work to have a Derby winning horse. That includes grooms and hot walkers and all of these people,
Wow. Yeah.
yeah, who are involved with the story of making a Derby winner a Derby winner. And so all of those people, of course, have precious things related to their Derby stories,
Mm.
and we're lucky to be able to preserve many of those for the future and yeah, help tell those stories.
Now, do you have hats there in the museum?
Oh yes, oh yes.
You have to have hats.
Yeah, actually, we have an exhibit open right now called See and Be Seen, which is a big exploration of 150 years of the fashion tradition
Oh
at
wow.
Churchill Downs on Derby Day. That's a huge part of that cultural experience of being at the Kentucky Derby or even just watching the Kentucky Derby on the television. And certainly, yeah, Derby hats are a huge part of that story, of that look, of that culture.
Mhm.
And that goes, from a $7,000 haute couture,
Wow.
hat created by a milliner, to something you've made out of a trash bag in your house. Like
Mhm.
these hats run the entire spectrum of yeah, fashion and camp and all kinds of goodies. So yeah, we have a pretty robust collection of fashion that we're showcasing right now in this exhibit, and we will be looking forward to continuing to tell fashion stories in our exhibits in the coming years as well.
So do you have artifacts from all 150 years?
Um, I'm sure that there are
But it goes
items.
back 150 years, some of your artifacts?
Absolutely, yeah,
Wow.
and before, because there are some stories that start prior to the founding of the Kentucky Derby in 1875. But we have the original, and it's showcased in our book. We have the original blueprints, hand drawn
Wow.
plans for the original clubhouse and grandstand that were designed in 1874, built in 1875. Those structures are no longer there, but we have
Oh, that's just
plans.
crazy. It is.
Yeah, so absolutely, we have a pair in our Black Heritage and Racing exhibit that tells the story of how integral Black horsemen were to the Kentucky Derby, and particularly in the early years of the Kentucky Derby during the Reconstruction era. Um, in that exhibit, we have a pair of canvas and leather training boots that were worn by the very first Kentucky Derby winner, Aristides.
Wow.
Yeah, we have things from all the way back in the beginning. And then we also, for example, have things that came into our collection just a couple weeks ago, that are part of the ongoing contemporary story of the Derby as well.
So I know it's gonna be hard. It's like asking what your favorite child is, but what's your favorite artifact or one of your top favorites that you every time you walk in, you're like, ah, when you look at it?
Yeah, I've got a couple favorites. Um, uh, well, as you say, I have hundreds of favorites,
Sure, right. Of
um,
course.
but yeah, just in terms of things that really mean something to me. So I'm somebody who I'm a book nerd, and I'm a handwriting nerd. I'm somebody who handwrites long form all of my manuscripts of my books before I type them up.
Mhm. I do too.
Um, so there was a really incredible ledger in our collection that I featured in the book, that has the handwritten and beautiful calligraphy, handwritten entries for all of the horses that were nominated for each race run at the Louisville Jockey Club, which is the original name of Churchill Downs. Um, uh, these handwritten records all the way back to 1875 up until 1900 in a single volume that I just happened to open one day in the archives and turned to the page and saw, oh, yep, there's Aristides and Oliver Lewis and the very first Kentucky Derby winner just written here in this beautiful script. Um, Things like that make you feel so close to the people who
Mhm.
are writing those records, who are keeping those records. And then you have things like an absolutely insane ensemble that just came into our collection that was worn multiple years um, by uh, uh, by a Derby lover and a Derby goer. Um, it's an ensemble that is completely homemade, includes a huge tutu and a big horse head hat and a stick horse, and is something that represents that really creative, wild side of
Mhm.
the Kentucky Derby culture and what you sort of are accustomed to seeing in the party center of the infield,
Right.
or
Right.
yeah, the people who don't have the expensive seats up in the clubhouse. Um, but it's very representative of the fun of the experience. It is hard to choose a favorite, but
Mhm.
those are things that come to
Those are some
mind.
nice ones. Yeah.
Yeah, those are things that come to mind.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that the book was the history of the Kentucky Derby in 75 objects.
Mhm.
Was that your first book, Jessica?
So I had done an introduction to a book prior to that.
Mhm.
So that was my first full length book
Mhm.
that I was fortunate to write on behalf of the Kentucky Derby
Sure.
Museum. But my independent projects that I've been doing for many, many years, that focus on the Kentucky artist, writer, and sort of sustainability pioneer Harlan Hubbard. Um, I had written an introduction to a book about his watercolors 3 years prior to that book, my Derby book coming out. So I'd had a little bit of experience with
Yeah.
publishing, but of course it's different just contributing to a publication versus doing a full scale publication that it's your
It's a lot
responsibility
different.
to do
Yeah.
all of it. Yeah. Yeah.
So your book is The Life of Harlan Hubbard,
Hmm.
and I'm not really familiar with Harlan Hubbard, and anyone that's watching may not be.
Yeah.
So can you just tell us a little bit about him?
Yeah. So he's a really fascinating character, and actually somebody that I hope gains a larger profile within the nation as a whole, because he has enjoyed a pretty much mainly regional, as in the region around Kentucky,
Mhm.
southern Indiana, that area. He's enjoyed a mostly regional type of fame up until now. Um, but he sort of earned this moniker of Kentucky's Thoreau, meaning that many people liken him and his ethos and his philosophies and his life to the wildly influential American transcendentalist work of Henry David Thoreau, who wrote Walden,
Mhm.
and whose focus was the importance of understanding and respecting nature, the importance of living deliberately and simply and with great yeah, with great respect for people and place. Um, and so Harlan sort of took on that mantle in Kentucky and transformed his life into this incredible adventure. For example, in his 40s, he marries his one and only wife. Her name was Anna, and Harlan and Anna decide in the 1940s to build a shanty boat. Are you familiar with what a shanty boat is?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So like a houseboat that was
Yeah.
very common along the Ohio River for many,
Right.
many years. But of course, by the 1940s was not seen very often.
No, no.
So Harlan and Anna build a shanty boat and they actually live in the shanty boat, drift down the Ohio and Mississippi rivers without a motor on their boat, and do this incredible shanty boat adventure that then he writes about and publishes his breakout book in 1953, Shanty Boat, that becomes a little bit of a sensation. And
Mm.
that whole book is about river adventure, about river culture, about river people, and about the importance of trying to understand um, how we can live in a respectful and reasonable way with as little as possible, and participating in contemporary commerce and culture as little as possible. Um,
Interesting.
so um, they had that adventure, and then Harlan and Anna move into a hand-built homestead in northern Kentucky, where they live completely off the grid, no electricity, no no running water. Um, they keep goats. They grow all of their own food. They and they do all of this in a way that Harlan was an artist, Anna was a librarian and a musician. They do all of this with great beauty, with great grace. They read together, they create art together, and they create this sort of utopia there in northern Kentucky that certainly when we read about it now, um, I gives us sort of some pointers, some blueprints for how we can be more sustainable in our
Right.
life
Right.
when we're living through a climate crisis. So they're very relevant. Their stories are very relevant to us. Um, I, of course, became involved with Harlan Hubbard because he was an artist first, but so I've studied his art for many, many years. But
Okay.
through his art, I then was opened into this other world of adventure, of writing, of gardening, of sustainability. Really remarkable and really inspiring to me personally, as well as to many people that I've gotten to work with over the years through this project.
And you can tell how passionate you are about it.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah. This is a huge passion project for me,
Mhm.
not just because it's so relevant and important to how our lives are unfolding here in 21st century America, but also because there are so many ways to fall in love with Harlan Hubbard. If you love art, there's something there for you. If you love
Mhm.
literature, there's something there for you. If you love boat building, there's something there for you. Like, if you love fishing, if you love, there's something there for almost everybody in the Hubbard story that can really bring communities together, bring people together. And I think that's really special that,
That is.
the story can inspire this kind of passion in so many different kinds of people with so many different kinds of interests. And those are the stories that I love. you know,
Well, congratulations on getting the book done and out there in people's hands.
Thanks.
That's an
Yeah.
accomplishment.
Yeah. It's that's my first completely solo, non-affiliated,
Mhm.
independent book project, and it was so gratifying. I mean, I'm a research nerd. I love going to archives, and I've just spent a decade, basically, um, digging and digging and digging into this person's life to
Right.
try and understand them and the way that they saw the world.
So Jessica, with all that you've done so far, what's next?
Well, certainly,
There's got to be
got
something on the horizon you want to do.
certainly got another derby coming up here. So,
After
there's
the
definitely
after the
that.
Derby,
Yeah,
what's next?
we have all kinds of exciting things coming at the museum. This is actually the Kentucky Derby Museum's 40th anniversary, which
Oh,
is really
wow.
cool.
Yeah.
So we're doing lots of celebrations as an institution about that really exciting anniversary. So in that sphere of my work life, we're really gearing up for an exciting new release of our big movie that we have at our museum, and some really exciting new exhibits that are coming. Um, but for me personally, I still have a lot of work that I'm doing related to Harlan Hubbard that sort of have accelerated through the work that I've been doing with his project. So, one of those larger projects is being part of a group called Payne Hollow on the Ohio. And Payne Hollow was that homestead that Harlan and Anna lived in Northern Kentucky. And Payne Hollow on the Ohio is an organization that I helped found in 2022. That's a nonprofit that is restoring that historic homestead,
Wow.
and working to preserve it, and to create a really remarkable place where art and culture and the environment all come together, and can be an educational hub for people. Um, and part of that are many, many artifacts, another artifacts collection that I'm helping manage, that was left behind by Harlan and Anna, and the person who inherited their home after them, a man named Paul Hasfurter. And so my next really big project is working with Payne Hollow on the Ohio, and potentially with some interns, to make sure that that collection is cataloged, is fully inventoried, and that yeah, we're working to make sure that collection is preserved in museum collections and interpreted at the site. So that's really fun too, because I get to go to Payne Hollow all the time, all the time. And it's a beautiful natural wonder, the place where they chose to live along the Ohio River in a very, very steep hollow in the limestone right along the river. And so, I get to take a beautiful hike when I go work on this project, which
Right,
is
right.
wonderful.
That's not too bad. I don't get to hike at work. So
Yeah,
that's nice.
yeah. So that's pretty good.
So are you able to go visit? Is it open to the public or not yet? Not yet?
So it's currently under restoration. So it's
Okay.
so we occasionally have I do their I manage their mailing list and their newsletters as well. So if you're interested in learning more about what's happening at Payne Hollow, you can go to paynehollowontheohio.org and
Okay.
sign up to get on the mailing list, which will tell you when we have open houses. Occasionally, we'll have open houses. We'll have community work days where people can come and help us chop down invasive species on the property, and clean up river trash and things like that.
Mhm.
But right now, it's still going through that historic preservation phase. So it's not currently open all the time to the public. But if you get on that newsletter, you'll know when there are opportunities available to visit.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today and share all this information. Again, I know very little about the Derby besides what it is, the horses, the hats, and the mint juleps. That's what I know, the important things about the Derby.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's really great because there's lots about the Kentucky Derby too. Just like the Hubbard story, there's so
Sure.
many different pieces to the
And I
Derby.
knew nothing about that. So this is all
Yeah.
new to me.
Yeah, well, that's
It's
awesome.
fascinating.
Well,
Yeah,
that's
history is just amazing.
it really is, and that's, I think, why we writers love to write books, and love to and why we like to go out into the community and talk to people about what we love, because
Right.
yeah, history's awesome.
Well, good luck with your new book. Good luck with the Derby. It's coming up very soon.
Yes, it is.
You
Yes.
probably have a number of days counted down.
Yeah. Yes, that's a pretty regular thing with us at the museum. Yeah.
And thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
It's gonna be great. It's gonna be
Thank you for watching today's episode of Empowering You. I'd like to thank my guest, Jessica K. Whitehead. Jessica shared so much information about the Kentucky Derby and some of its history and artifacts. It was so exciting to hear about it. And also her new book about Harlan Hubbard, who I wasn't familiar with. You can just tell Jessica's passion is coming through. I hope you enjoyed her episode. Thank you for watching and see you next time.
It's gonna